Folks, 100 days. 100 days until the midterms, and the left, the drive-by media, the Democratic Socialists, the whole beautiful coalition of grievance, they are absolutely salivating. They think they've got it. They think this is their moment. They think the American people are ready to hand the gavel back to Bella Pelosi's caucus, back to the people who brought you open borders, record inflation, and a foreign policy that apologized to everybody from Paris to Pyongyang. They look at a Fox News poll and they say, "Oh my goodness, we're at our highest generic ballot number since 1996. It's over. It's a blue wave." My friends, I have heard this song before. I know every note. I know the bridge. I know the chorus. I know the key change in the middle. The drive-by media has been writing the Democrat comeback story since approximately 48 hours after the last election they lost. It is the most predictable thing in American life, more predictable than death, taxes, and CNN's ratings being in the basement. Now, today we are going to talk about what is really happening 100 days out. The Republican messaging, the communist surge in the Democratic Party, and yes, I used the word communist, and I mean it, and I'll defend it, and what this DSA moment means for New York City, for your kids, and for this country. We are also going to get into the courts, into the judges, into the block of everything this administration tries to do on immigration. And I want to talk about a Democrat congressman who thinks we ought to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu on American soil. I am going to need you with me for this one. Buckle up, drive safe, keep your hands on the wheel, and whatever you do, do not touch that dial. I'm Rick LeBow. This is Rush Hour, and we are just getting started. 100 days, folks. 100 days. And the Republican National Congressional Committee, the campaign arm for House Republicans, has put out a memo, an exclusive memo over at the Washington Examiner, saying they are in, quote, the strongest position this committee has ever been in. That's a pretty bold claim. Let's unpack it. Now, the Democrats need 6 seats. 6, that's all. 6 seats to flip the House and get the gavel back. And when you see that number, 6, and you see this Fox News poll showing Democrats at their highest generic ballot since 1996, the drive-by media immediately starts typing. They type fast when there's bad news for Republicans. Fastest fingers in the business. But here's what I want you to keep in your head, and I want you to keep it there all the way through November. Generic ballot polls in July are about as useful for predicting November as a weather forecast for Halloween written today. They tell you the mood. They don't tell you the election. Republicans thought they were going to have a rough 2022. They thought they'd have a rough, well, they think a lot of things that don't come to pass. And the Democrats, they thought they were going to have a wonderful 2024. We know how that went. Now, here's the thing that nobody in the drive-by media wants to talk about, the Republican story on offense. Because here's what is happening inside the Democratic Party that should make every normal American sit up a little straighter in their chair. The GOP is leaning into anti-communist messaging hard. And my friends, this is not just rhetoric. This is not just a bumper sticker. This is a completely accurate description of a real movement that has taken over the Democratic Party's activist base, and anybody pretending otherwise either doesn't know what the DSA is, or they do know, and they're hoping you don't. The Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, these are not your grandfather's New Deal Democrats. These are not guys who want a slightly higher minimum wage and a few more bike lanes. These are people who have a red star for a logo, whose founding documents trace their intellectual lineage directly back to Marxist theory, whose members openly celebrate collectivism, nationalization of industry, elimination of private property, the whole menu. And they are not a fringe group outside the Democratic Party. They are the Democratic Party's activist engine in major American cities. New York City just elected their mayor, Zohran Mamdani, Democratic Socialist. And immediately, folks, the DSA has announced it is going to use its relationship with Mayor Mamdani to stage a takeover of New York City public schools, your children's schools. They want to convert the curriculum, the culture, the structure of public education in the largest city in this country into a laboratory for democratic socialist ideas. And right on cue, Congressman Ro Khanna of California. Well, I think the United States should arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he comes here. Let me just sit here with that for a second. A sitting United States congressman is calling for the arrest of the democratically elected Prime Minister of Israel, our closest ally in the most volatile region on Earth, on American soil, based on an international criminal court warrant. The same ICC that has zero jurisdiction over American decisions. The same ICC that the United States has never ratified. The same ICC that we specifically passed legislation to protect our own military from. And it is not just Khanna, folks. Mayor Mamdani of New York City made the same call. He walked it back a little. Apparently, someone told him the mayor of New York City doesn't have the authority to arrest foreign heads of state. Good to know someone in that administration has a faint relationship with constitutional law. But the walkback didn't settle anything down, because Jewish leaders in New York are not calmed. And they shouldn't be, because the problem was never whether Mamdani has handcuffs big enough. The problem is the worldview that produces that kind of statement from a sitting mayor. This is the coalition of the oppressed doing what it always does, finding new enemies, building new hierarchies of victimhood, and targeting Israel, which in this framework is simply the stand-in for Western civilization, for American power, for everything they want to tear down. Now, I want to connect some dots here, because that's what we do on the Excellence in Podcasting Network, and this golden microphone isn't just decorative. The same movement that wants to arrest Netanyahu is the same movement that wants to run your kid's school in New York. The same movement that produces candidates in Maine with Nazi tattoos. Yes, there was a Democratic Senate candidate in Maine with a Nazi tattoo. Graham Plattner. I am not making this up. The same movement that's cranking out these candidates is the one the drive-by media tells you is going to sweep to power in 100 days on a blue wave. And the Democrats in Maine, they just did what they did with Kamala Harris. Party bosses, not voters, bosses, handpicked the replacement, a fella named Troy Jackson, logger turned lawmaker, which is a fine background. I have nothing against loggers, but the process was identical to the coronation of 2024. No primary, no voters consulted, no grassroots, no democracy. The party decides, and the voters are supposed to smile and accept it. They tell you to save democracy. While they do that, now, the Republicans, and I want to give credit here because the Attila the Hun chair gives credit where it is due. The Republicans are starting to understand that anti-communist messaging is not a throwback to McCarthyism. It is a completely rational, accurate, and politically powerful description of what the Democratic Party has become. When your opponent's foot soldiers have a red star on their flag and cite Marx in their literature, calling them communists is not McCarthyism. It's reading comprehension. Senator Lankford, though, James Lankford of Oklahoma, he was on the Alex Marlow show complaining that conservative media is beating up on Republicans. Senator, my friend, Senator, the job of conservative media is to hold everyone accountable, including Republicans. If you don't want conservative media to have opinions about what you're doing, then perhaps public life was not the wisest career choice. The turtle, Mitch McConnell, spent a decade not getting beaten up enough by conservative media, and look how that turned out. I will say this about the midterms, though. The NRCC memo makes a point that is worth taking seriously. Redistricting, fundraising, candidate recruitment, the nuts and bolts. They say they are ahead on all of it. And that matters. That matters enormously in close races. The generic ballot tells you mood. Organization wins races. But here is my caution, and I say this sitting in the Attila the Hun chair with this golden EIP microphone in front of me, with all the humble modesty I possess, which, as you know, is not a great quantity. The Republican Party will not keep this House, and frankly does not deserve to keep it, if they cannot articulate a clear, compelling, muscular answer to the communist surge in the Democratic Party. Not just they're socialists as a talking point, but a full-throated, unapologetic celebration of American freedom, American capitalism, American individual liberty, and a demonstration that they are the party that will fight for it. Because the American people, my friends, are not going to be saved by a party that is embarrassed by its own convictions. Don't doubt me on that one. All right, the roundup. 3 stories, rapid fire, because we have a lot of ground to cover, and I have a lot of opinions, which should surprise absolutely nobody. First up, the courts. Again. Because we cannot have a single week on this program without talking about a judge somewhere in this country deciding that the executive branch does not get to execute policy. We have 2 separate situations. First, a federal appeals court blocked the president's executive order on mail-in ballot rules in 23 states. Now, this is a big one, folks. The administration wanted uniform rules, stricter verification, cleaner deadlines ahead of the midterms. Reasonable, sensible, the kind of thing that a country that takes its elections seriously would do without any argument. And a federal appeals court said no, just no. The fight will apparently go to the Supreme Court. Good. That's where it should go. And I have an opinion about how that turns out. But I will wait until they actually decide before I say I told you so. Second, and this one is a win, and we do celebrate wins here, a federal judge ruled that Illinois laws giving in-state tuition and financial aid to illegal immigrants are unconstitutional. The governor of Illinois has been running that state like a sanctuary paradise, and the courts just told him that taxpayer money for people who are not here legally is not actually legal. Remarkable concept. Meanwhile, we have a judge in Massachusetts running back-to-back rulings blocking deportations of Ethiopians and South Sudanese, even after the Supreme Court ruled. Even after the Supreme Court ruled. This is what happens when you spend 3 administrations packing the lower courts with activists and calling them judges. A judge who has apparently decided that her personal foreign policy preferences supersede both ICE enforcement and a Supreme Court ruling. These are the people in robes making decisions about your country. I want you to remember that when someone tells you judicial appointments are boring. Second story. SpaceX. Starship Flight 13. 13! And folks, they absolutely nailed it. The rocket, and I'm talking about a vehicle the size of a 30-story building, came down into the Indian Ocean in what the engineers called the softest splashdown ever, flipping into its vertical position, heat shield completely intact. This is what American ingenuity looks like when the government is not entirely in the way. Elon Musk and his team at SpaceX have done more for actual space exploration in the last 5 years than NASA managed in the previous 20. And the goal here is the moon. We are going back to the moon, and it is going to happen. And it is happening because of American private enterprise. Meanwhile, we have people in this country who want to tax this into the ground and regulate it into submission and have the DSA run the procurement office. I'll take Elon's approach, thank you. The final story is this Turkey business with Turkey. An expert, the head of a leading Greek-American advocacy group, is warning that if we return Turkey to the F-35 fighter program, we are essentially handing the Chicoms a window into one of the most advanced military aircraft on Earth. Why? Because Turkey has opened its telecommunications infrastructure to Chinese firms. Chinese firms with known ties to the Chinese Communist government. And we're supposed to hand them access to the F-35. Now, folks, I want to be clear-eyed about this. Turkey is a NATO member. Turkey controls the Bosphorus Strait. Turkey has been a complicated ally for decades, and I understand the strategic logic of keeping them in the tent. But there is no strategic logic, none, zero, not a molecule, that justifies giving a country with Chinese telecom infrastructure access to the crown jewel of American air superiority. The F-35 program exists to keep America ahead. The moment the Chicoms understand exactly what makes it tick, we are behind. It is that simple, and I hope the people making this decision understand that. All right, my friends, my wonderful, loyal, long-suffering friends. 100 days. 100 days and the fate of the House hangs in the balance. And with it, the fate of everything the Trump administration is trying to build, dismantle, or reform. And the choice, as I see it from this chair, is becoming very clear. You have, on one side, a party whose activist base openly carries socialist literature, wants to teach your kids what they teach, wants to arrest our allies, wants to import the world's problems and make them your financial obligation, and wants to put judges in courtrooms who ignore the Supreme Court when it rules the wrong way. And on the other side, you have a Republican Party that, when it is at its best, believes in your ability to run your own life, believes in American industry, believes in borders and sovereignty and the rule of law, and believes that this country is worth defending. The all-knowing, all-sensing, all-seeing Maha Ricky tells you this. The generic ballot in July is not the election. Organization, turnout, and a clear message win elections. The Republicans have the organization. They are building the message. The question is whether they have the nerve to deliver it without flinching. And the American people, the ones working, building, raising families, paying taxes, asking only to be left alone by their government, they are watching. They always are. They are the adults in the room, and they have been for a very long time. And when they finally get tired enough, they make their voice known in ways that no poll predicted and no pundit saw coming. I have been behind this microphone long enough to have seen it happen. I believe I will see it happen again. I'm Rick LeBow. This has been Rush Hour, same time tomorrow, if they let us back on.